and a bit wonky drawn type on top of it. I'm interested in the painting of how you can, that it's not just on the canvas. These are only small, but a friend of mine's got a screen printing business. He screen printed the backgrounds, and I've just, the actual type forms of these are off old record covers that I collect, and usually there's, you can buy them quite cheaply. Beautiful printing on the record covers, and so I make collages out of those, and then sometimes I'll find their way into more kind of finished works. This is a painting it's back from 2008. Has some relationship, obviously, to this work over here, and but as I said, I made that, and then I didn't follow that as a kind of style, if you like, until recent times, actually until this last year, where a whole lot of things have been around these kind of designs. People see what that says?
Blah, blah, blah.
You guys are on it. Yeah, and so you'll see this has a relationship to this work and to some more recent paintings as well. And so these are just, I just design these all hand kind of design. I work on graph paper and just draw them up, scale them up. They get projected up onto this size. This one's quite large, and then they're taped out. The hard edge ones are taped out, and the enamel paint does allow you to get it nice and accurate. That kind of tape, you get a nice, clean kind of edge, or usually needs a little bit of touch up here and there. That's just an install of a gallery that I used to show with in Melbourne. Paintings was a neon. There's a cutout text piece, freestanding, and the blah 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 painting. Gives you a little bit of sense of scale and arrangement. I really like exhibiting, putting on shows, and thinking about the best way to install the work. I've done a few art fairs in Melbourne and Sydney, and I just was in Hong Kong, which I'll come to later. This was at the Melbourne Art Fair 2006, and I did a big wall painting. I've done these wall paintings over the years, and again, just when an opportunity comes, I'll make a wall painting. This one I did then just hang the paintings on the wall painting, which I've done in the past, and again, it's kind of an extension of the painting practice, that it it's a little more immersive, and other opportunities have come out of working on that scale. You obviously can't work on that scale on canvas. They do get painted out, again, the wall paintings, but it's fine. There's a kind of moment of them. Some have stayed, some are in people's houses, and they are a little more permanent, but usually they only have a short lifespan, the wall paintings. It's a kind of loose backyard is what that wall painting is, which I've done these paintings of backyards in the past as well. I've worked on different surfaces. I paint mainly on just like cotton duck, or work on board, like on plywood. Sometimes I don't know if you have it here, MDF. It's like a smooth fibre board. It's quite nice to paint on because of the smoothness. I've also done this large work and small works on tea towels. That I guess it's similar here. We've got quite a history of tea towels that have a particular kind of presence in a way of kind of imagining the country. Well, there's one that has been
gifted to me.
Yeah, I've done some editions with this with a group in Melbourne called Third Draw Down, who do artist editions, and one of the things they do is tea towels. So I've made some as an edition with them, but I have collected tea towels, and I collected tea towels over about maybe a 20-year period now, because I have a thing that we have in, like you have Americana. We've got Australiana, and so it is those kind of moments that are a bit folky or daggy, or they're ways of sort of imagining or picturing a place or a kind of history that is slightly outdated but is still a history nonetheless. So I've reworked quite a few of the tea towels to, I guess, update them in a way, or give them a more contemporary feel, or a more, maybe says a little bit more of the changing nature of our history, or the changing nature of Australian culture. We've got a very multicultural country. We've got the original Indigenous community, Aboriginal community, which has been there 40,000 years, and then, you know, it's only been Anglo-Saxon 230 odd years now. So it's a small history of that. But that 230 years is made up, you know, for people all around the world. Like it was, you know, the British sent the convicts out there to, not really to multiply, but they did. And so, you know, the country has, in a kind of white sense, that was the kind of start of it. And so it's been waves over that period of time, particularly in the last 100 years, I guess, that have come from all around the world. So it's a funny kind of white history in some ways that's on the tea towel. So for me, it's about kind of updating that in some ways. So this was a large work of 88 tea towels, and I've started to add different personal stories, all kinds of things onto them to make a new narrative, essentially. I remade it at the National Gallery Victoria. They did a big kind of survey show, and they had like 6 metre high walls in there, so it made sense to maybe try and reconfigure it and use the kind of wall in that sense. And that gives you a little bit more detail on it. But some that I left, you know, there's some of these funny, I'm trying to think, there's some classic ones, like, you know, beautiful, almost like a vintage, I guess, Surfer's Paradise tea towel, maybe from the 60s, and that was just too beautiful to touch, and had all the design in it, and it just, you know, could kind of stay as it is. Some have stayed, others I've just added different bits and pieces to.
So wait, John, are these are found tea towels that you add things to?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
The actual original, you add
the
things
original,
to?
yeah, added to the original. I mean, they're in like second-hand stores, op shops, opportunity shops,
right.
And you know, they're a little more sought after now. Some of them, the more vintage ones, people will pay a few more dollars for them, and they're a little bit rarer. But there's a whole range of them. You know, in country areas, sometimes you pick them up. And one time around the corner from where I used to live, they had a church fete, and they had a box of tea towels out there. Unbelievable. And I maybe bought like 20 of them, and I should have bought like the whole box in retrospect, because you just, some you don't find. They still pop up. And so that's just an ongoing kind of project. That's one particular work, and others are individual works, and I've still got a big pile of tea towels. So, you know, from time to time I'll make a tea towel, or might exhibit a tea towel. This is just in relationship to the flags that we've got around here. That, as part of that show that the tea towels was in, we did a show called Flags for Melbourne, but it was a group show. There was, I think, about a dozen artists in it, and this is in the National Gallery, Victoria. It's called the Great Hall. It's got this great stained glass window that was made, stained glass ceiling that was made in the 60s. And so the flags were hung throughout that, and they were hung around the city, all kinds of venues actually. And so they're just my 3 across the front here, which obviously relate to the project in Stanford. That's some other banners out at a winery in country Victoria, and which were titles of love songs. and they're just painted. They're paintings like on unstretched canvas, stitched up and then hung as banners. So music has had this other relationship, as well as kind of writing songs, performing. It's become is part of the imagery, I guess, or subject matter that has again been ongoing and comes and goes. And you know, I made the set list painting in the room downstairs, and I've made set list paintings on and off over maybe about a 12-year period now. And from time to time, I'll make one again and maybe show them at some point together. They're all a bit dispersed, but that's another banner. Lucas Piss. So these come out of the language, out of the saying. I don't know if you have that saying here. We have that in Australia. You know, whereas it's like exaggerating. You know, it's not just weak; it's weak as piss. And so things like that are. I don't know if they are particular to us, but there is something in the language that we like to add things like that. We love to abbreviate things. We'll abbreviate it down. We've got certain funny sayings that just, I think, are particular to us. This rhyming slang that we have. We call it kind of slang, as you call it slang anywhere, but you know, things like instead of saying pocket, you say skyrocket. It's sort of funny, it just becomes in the language. I don't know where it comes from exactly, but there's things like that that are in the language that I'm interested in, and so Weakest Piss kind of comes out of that. This is a screen printed banner and sewn, and it's called reverse applique, so each letter's kind of sewn into the fabric, so it's in reverse. You see the back of it, you see the stitching and all on the back of it. It's quite nice. I don't do the stitching, I've got or the screen printing. I work with the screen printer, and we've got a really great textile artist who's sewn a lot of my flags and banners, and yeah, she's really great. This was a big banner project, again at one of the Melbourne art fairs. I got a commission to do it, and essentially it was about trying to fill, it's called the Exhibition Buildings in Melbourne, which is where the first Australian Parliament was held, it was like 1901, something like that. Beautiful old historical building. They had the art fair in there. It was about trying to activate the space, you know, like it goes up 100 feet or something. I can't, you know. We work in metric back home, so I've really been struggling with the measurements since I've been here. I mean, I learned feet and inches when I was a kid, but I got into the metric. So these were all large-scale screen-printed banners, and hung kind of throughout the space with a front and back to all of them. This is an example I was saying about the use of the record covers and the letters. All these letters are literally just cut out of record covers, reassembled for works on paper, and in some instances I've made some paintings in relationship to that, like tried to repaint those letters as they are. But great, you know, of course, on this kind of history of album covers, and you know, I know we're in a kind of digital world, but it means there is a lot of second-hand vinyl out there that no one's really going to listen to anymore. But the print quality and all on it, or the imagery, the typography is really fantastic. And so I've got a good collection. I mean, I listen to records, but I've got quite a lot that become kind of really great source material. That's just small. I work quite small with works on paper, around, you know, A4 size, A3 size, with all kinds of mediums in the end. And so I have done some of these, you know, more public works, if you like works outside of the gallery, a bit like the flags and banners here. This one was in Sydney. It was a Sydney Laneways project, and Harbour View, like, I don't know if anyone's ever been to Sydney, but there is a beautiful harbour in Sydney, and the Opera House, Museum of Contemporary Art, all the ferries head across to Manly, like it's quite spectacular. And a lot of people, the most sought after real estate is around the harbour, and So I guess like in most places you would go, there's a particular view which is the best view, and so in Sydney you have a harbour view. So I made that in the laneway just to, you know, make people think a little more maybe about what their view is, or it's obviously not the harbour view there, but, that, you know, what's particular about their view, or, you know, there's a lot of interesting views, of course. And that was just a commercial vinyl print, quite large scale, that I'm not going to go into the sizes.
Did you choose, did they give you a space and you chose the word based on the space?
Yes,
okay.
yes, we got that space. I wanted it to go right across here, but there was problems with fixing and covering over these vents and all, but it worked out fine in the end. I mean, it was okay. They couldn't get fixings into the sides of the buildings, but yeah, and I've got another artist who's good with the design. So, you know, I work with him, he designs this on, we set up on the computer as a file, and then the banner, the vinyl banner company make it and do the installation of it. We have trams in Melbourne as part of the public transport system. This is an old tram. They're called these W-class trams. It's probably, I don't know, might be 60 years old, the tram. And they only run on one circle around the city now. And as part of the Melbourne Festival Public Art Project, I got to do a design on the old one. We put in proposals for this, and they picked about 8 designs for artists. Most are on more contemporary trams. There's quite a big public transport system in Melbourne. I got to do this old one, so this is a sort of schematised backyard again. And again, it was a bit of taking something that was more personal to people in a way, or as a space. Like, we have got quite a bit of space in Australia, and so people do like to live in these houses with as much land as they can get. Even though things are changing, like people are, you know, the city's had a big growth, and people living in the city, people are still going out into the suburbs for their, they call it a quarter-acre block, and they're going to have a house, decent sized house, a front yard and a backyard. So the backyard, and it was big in my upbringing, the backyard was a big part of my life, and I spent a lot of time in there with my family, my brothers, and so I've done work around the backyard as a kind of, as a site in a way. And so this was just a way of taking it out onto the streets, again, to allow people maybe to think about, you know, the idea of the backyard, or what it means to them, or if it's important or not. And so this went for 6 months, travelled around the city. It's vinyl, it's like a vinyl wrap, and the again, it was just designed digitally. I just supply kind of drawings in a way, and then they get outlined, and the tram guys, because it's a bit like putting on you know, signage for whatever, you know, for exhibitions or the theatre or whatever, that they lay the vinyl round onto them. So they did it with this, did a really great job. They kind of can heat the vinyl on, because this has got all, you know, these old bolts and stuff onto it, and they beautifully kind of stretched it over that. And because the surface of the tram was old, even though the vinyl's all smooth, it had a kind of nice kind of bump to it. So it looked, most people thought it was painted on, actually. They did do a tram project about 30 years ago where the artists did paint the trams with the tramway workers, and they were all painted over, like in the workshops, over, you know, 2 to 3 month period. And so this was a bit of an upgrade of that project, if you like. These are some large light boxes. This was also part of this same commission. The banners are down here, and there's a space in the middle, and I made these, it's called stacks on. It was 2-sided light boxes with text on them, and each box kind of sat on top of the next box. And again, you know, it's a fairly large-scale work.
John?
Yeah?
What does the middle one say, or
G'day, mate. Well,
I see that.
but it's like saying it the wrong way, because we've got g'day, mate, and but often when people say it, that's how it comes out. I've heard plenty of people that go, "G'day, mate," or in some funny way. So that's again this sort of reference to the language, and that just like that, you will say it. You know, there's moments, hopefully, that these things engage you. So you will, you know, mouth that to try and find out what it is. And so there's moments like that where, you know, hopefully the work kind of engages you a little bit like that. So it's meant to be humorous, because people do struggle to get that kind of twang or something that we have. And so neon has been something that I've used probably again, well, over like a 10-year period now, and neons come from time to time. Again, it's just, you know, the medium is out there in, you know, a little neon in the front of the building there for, you know, signage, advertising, essentially. And although there's a big history of neon in art, obviously, and has been used, you know, I guess 50 years now, and it's very, it's a very seductive kind of medium, the neon, and as opposed to other, you know, LED lighting, or, you know, there's a lot of updates on neon these days, but the neon, I think, has got a particular quality, and so particular words have gone out into neon at particular times. And again, with particular words, these are just scaled at about this size, so they're quite domestic, and the idea is that it's about really bringing the neon back into a more domestic space. So rather than them sitting on the outside of the building, these are for people to have in their house, that they could illuminate the house, as well as operate as a kind of beautiful artwork in the end. I did do an exhibition about 2 years ago called 10 Years of Neon, because as I said, I've made the neons over a period of time, but might show one here, maybe two there. We brought all the neons together, turned the lights out, and it was really nice to see them as a group at that time, and showed me the idea that maybe I can bring some collections of things now together to make a show. And, you know, it's just sort of time and getting to do all these things. You can't end up doing them all. And, you know, there's plenty of things now that I've got, even coming out of these works, to think about them in neon. Essentially, I've got a really good neon maker in Melbourne. He's a Portuguese guy. He just works out of his garage. But his neon work is really superb. And the broken one, he'd made it. A collector in New Zealand bought it. Went over there, one of the letters went off. We're like, well, we'll just get someone locally, like a local neon guy can fix the letter. Anyway, they couldn't fix it, and then they said, all right, well, we'll just get the local guy to remake the word sunshine. So the local guy remade it, and it was terrible. And the collector said, I'm not having that. And so he sent that back to us to have a look. And, you know, my neon guys got it all beautifully bent, and this was up and down all over the place. And I was thinking, my guy is really good, or the other guy was just really bad, I'm not sure. But there's a real difference in that. And so, you know, there's these few people that I do work with and have worked with over a period of time now that are good kind of craftspeople, I guess. That's a little shittier neon. That's only just small, that size. Again, just to be in the domestic space. Just sing what you feel. That's the largest neon that I've made. And these are all on cut-out backing boards, like they're enamel painted backing boards. Again, it just keeps this kind of relationship to painting, and also gives the neon, it's very hard to kind of photograph the neon, you can't quite see it here, but you can see it a little bit. There's a reflection that happens off the kind of enamel backing board, so it just has another spatial kind of element to it, as opposed to, I have attached them to the wall before, but it just is too much like signage for me or something. It's just, you know, they're usually flat walls, and it doesn't kind of resonate to what I'm looking for. But on these the glossy backgrounds, it becomes quite dimensional, the neon.
Well, it stabilizes it too, right? Because neon, you have to like other people are installing it. We had a big neon piece here. So.
It makes it much easier to I've seen the neon, like, some people get some pretty elaborate packing going on for the neon. And look, it's pretty strong, but it will break. And this, deals with a bit of that as well. And mind you, it just depends how people pack them. I had another one come back recently that was broken as well, but it was really badly packed. You can't put a neon on a truck like that with a bit of bubble wrap around it. So a little bit of music stuff. So I had played music and for a long time, since I guess the mid-80s, when I played in bands and stuff, nothing famous or anything. It was just, I did have a moment at art school thinking about, maybe could I go and play music, but I'm a pretty average musician. So, and obviously got, I was more interested in painting and making things. So these days the music is around just doing it, I guess it's part of my art practice that we just perform at openings. I do perform in pubs and do gigs like that as well, but I'm not really chasing that so much. I've got a couple of little bands and duos that I play with. I write songs, I'm making recordings, I'm just I've just recorded an album, and just to do it essentially, like the same like making paintings or something in the end. I don't have a record deal or anything like that, but it's allowed for other things to happen actually, and some of the subject is better, performed or sung, if you like. I've had these text cards, sometimes a little more performative, and other people have come in and used the cards in that. It goes back to that Bob Dylan Subterranean Homesick Blues, and which I think has had influence all around the world. It's had influence on me, and I've made some videos and done some performances with that in mind, with these text cards that are literally, held and kind of thrown out. That's a little. I've got a little band called Pamela with a couple of ex-students of mine, and it's like a little folk trio. Often we'll play in the gallery. This is in the Museum of Contemporary Art in Sydney, and all pretty lo-fi, and we just walk around and play in front of particular works in the gallery. It's quite a nice way to perform, and obviously for the audience that you're looking at us, and us and the work kind of sit together or something. That's been a more recent thing, is to perform like that in the gallery. This is the cards. This is a Melbourne artist, Sue Dodd, who makes videos and does performance work. She just comes on mid-song, flings the cards around. Got a big yeah flag in the background there. I made one enormous yeah flag for an exhibition, and so that has served as a backdrop from time to time. What else? Oh, that's us. I just like that shot. And every time, you like that, Tom? Yeah. Each time we play film and take a photo, I go, now we're going to jump at the end of the song, try and catch it. Anyway, this is the only time someone's caught it. And again, Minna and Georgia are two younger Melbourne artists. That was at Minna's opening. She's on the left. That's one of her paintings behind.
Who painted the guitar?
Minna did as well, yeah. The yeah flag, you have going time-wise here, all right? Because I've got just a few more things there. So this again relates to the flag out the front. And so I made this flag in 2004 for an exhibition in New Zealand. I went over to do a little show in an artist-run space in Auckland, and I went down to, there's another city, Hamilton, not, it's 3 or 4 hours from Auckland. I went and did a talk at the art school, and I met two young artists there who, maybe a couple of months after when I came back to Melbourne, asked me if I could give them a design for a flag, because they had these 2 flagpoles in the centre of the city, and they were going to do a group show on the flags. And so I sent over this, and so I did, started to think about what could be good on the flag, and thought a word could be good on it, because you don't see that many single words flying. I'd already used this design. I'd use the word yeah in a few paintings, and I thought that could have a particular vibe. So there is, you know, from time to time there's the push to change the flag. I would like to see the flag change. That was a moment to change it, but I don't know if that would happen in my lifetime now. But so we decided to make, you know, a petition and a little push here just locally with this idea of changing the flag. And you know, you need, the country has to vote to change the flag. I needed 200,000 signatures or something for them to think about it. We didn't get near that, but we did get signatures, and we got the conversation. That's sort of what it was about. So we set it just up. All it was the flag and the desk, essentially, in the gallery, and you came in, and we just, you know, basically talked to people about that, about the idea of changing the flag. We made these hand wavers. That was for the Commonwealth Games in Melbourne, which is like a more, I guess, local version of the Olympic Games. It's just, again, the countries that are in the Commonwealth, which comes under kind of British rule again in that. And there's quite a lot of small countries come to, a lot of islander countries come with a small group of athletes, some local support and stuff for them. But we had this idea that made these hand waves that could be for anybody, that you could, we made we made 3,000 or something, and I thought, oh, this will be good, I'll have a kind of presence. But I needed like 30,000 or something to have a presence. But we did go to the marathon, and we had a little event outside. It's a university gallery was standing at the front. It was early on a Sunday morning, and I don't know, maybe 50 people came, waved the flags for the marathon runners. But I hadn't quite estimated the timing of it, because it's only a small group of runners in the marathon, and it literally was over in a flash. Like, we were near the start of it, and they ran up the street, and we waved them, and then they were gone. Luckily, and then the women came, so we did have two of them. But again, it was more just the gesture, I think, the moment to do it. People did come, we waved the flags, it was quite a moment. I don't know what the runners thought about it, but yeah, so it's been used in different ways. And so that kind of came out of, the curator at the museum. I had the flag inside. It was a show on about sport, and like, what can we do? And then they were like, maybe we can make the hand wavers. We can have an event to wave them somewhere in the Commonwealth Games. And so we chose the marathon. That's again a large vinyl billboard out in a more industrial part of the city where I grew up, actually, and so it was nice to take that back there. That's really large scale. I got the big vinyl back off them, which is folded up in the storage. I don't know what I'm going to do with it, but it's like they were just going to throw it out. I wanted to have the yeah 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 in reverse on the other side, but the road authorities said no, it's too distracting for the drivers, so it's just blank on the other side of it. But again, this is just around these ideas of more public works, which I'm increasingly interested in. Now that's Sydney Harbour. That's the Opera House. This is on this side, the MCA. They put Museum of Contemporary Art. They put a couple of flagpoles in for an exhibition, portable flagpoles, and that's my money shot of the flag with the Opera House in the background. And it is very beautiful around there if you ever go to Sydney, around that little harbour area. All the ferries go out from here and go across the harbour. It's nice. Now this is just coming up. I've only got a couple more things to show you. I was in Hong Kong last week for the Hong Kong Art Fair. I had a booth in a small section of the art fair called Discovery Section with my gallery from Sydney. First time either of us had shown there. And this is a group of paintings that have this relationship to the wall painting here, and have this relationship to the idea of painting in the spaces around the text. So they're slightly more abstracted. You've got to look at them a little bit more. Maybe the text comes to you a little bit slower. It was great in Hong Kong. They had a lot of good response, and did have those moments when people actually worked out what the text was. Usually with a bit of a smile on their face. And yeah, again, first time I'd shown a group of works like this. Usually when I make the exhibitions, it's a little more loose, if you like. But in the context of the art fair, it was really good to keep it nice and tight this time, and because most of the booths for people who've been to art fairs, there's stuff kind of everywhere. And so we had a little bit of presence here with these paintings the same size, tight in small booths. So it did, it was quite effective, and we had a really good response to it. So again, give me a few ideas for things to do next. And it leads us back to here. It's a great opportunity to make this work here. One of the main things about this is the angle of the work. That when I first came up to see Terri and the guys, and I looked at the space, and here's the wall, and I was like, oh yeah, look at that big bench in the corner there. Like, what are we going to do about that? And then just to angle it has really kind of made the work. So, these moments can be used to your advantage. And so one of the big things out of this is this idea of tilting the work. I've got in my studio at the moment, the sort of template for this, and I've just been sticking drawings and stuff onto it, but I'll probably recreate some of these things I think back home. I'm doing a show in Sydney in October, and I might reuse that or at least tape it up, but on the angle. And now I've been thinking, maybe I'll make some paintings on the angle as well. So, that's been one of the treats for me coming out of this. It's just that shift, like it's just always in the moment, a lot of these things that you're not, I wasn't thinking about that at all before I did this. And I guess just circumstances opened up something for me. So, I think there's some possibility in this now for the future. This idea of how you can insert something into the landscape, if you like. That, again, we're usually looking at flags or banners that, if they're not national flags, they're banners that might be advertising an event or a business or something like that. So it's always seen that that's a good place to insert something else. And so I guess I think about that like these ones in Stanford, that it's putting something there that you haven't seen before, that you haven't seen anything like that in that kind of space, and so that allows you to maybe think a little bit more about that space, or it'd be great if it brought people back to the gallery, or started some things up like that. But it does have a slight kind of function about it as well as being visual, that you can just enjoy it or wonder about it or think, what the hell are these things? But it could allow you to think a little bit more, or follow that, or maybe at the end of the day, someone's going to go home and go, "I've seen all these flags, there are all these words, like what's that about?" And then something kind of happens, I think, in that moment. So the public works hopefully work a little bit like that. It's the same everywhere. There's a certain audience that will come into the gallery, and I think I like the idea of, if they're not, then let's take it to them a little bit, and then maybe that might bring them back in a bit. They look great around here. We had a little drive around before and went out the other day. And, it's really come on, the project. When we first started on this, and we had our first emails, and we're kind of talking about it, and I'm going, I don't know if this is going to happen. We'll just see, who really knows? And then bit by bit, bang, there they are. They're out there, and they, I reckon they've got a real presence. I think for me, they look fantastic. So it's good. It's really a great project to get up. And I know also from doing the projects, there's all kinds of difficulties that can come with the public artworks, and a lot of people have got different things invested in it, whether they will allow you to do this, put this on that, or put that on that. There's all everywhere. Bureaucracy's kind of killing us, and so it's the same in the sort of public art realm. We've got quite a lot of bad public art in Melbourne.
We have quite a bit of bad public art here too.
Yeah, bad sculptures inserted permanently into spaces. So there's
I like that these have got an impermanence to them. They'll go up at a particular time. Ones that I've used in the past, these will fade over a few months here. If you leave them up for 6 months, they'll fade, maybe a year. I've had some of the Yare flags that have nearly faded to white. Not so much the bunting around them in like a flag bunting, but there was a pink on it, on the Yare, and it had nearly faded to white like over a 6 month period. And they're getting ripped and torn. And I've got a collection of those again that maybe I'll show at some point. So there's a nice history to them like that, and you kind of retire them or something. Like it's not, it's not going to be there forever. I mean, it's great this flagpole out in front of them, and you can just keep. Once mine comes down, someone else's goes up. It is a good space, and they're simple to work with. It's not a big cost on it. And so we've done a few flag things in Melbourne with some friends, and it's a good space to put something into.
Thanks. All right, sing us a song, mister.
Oh.
I will sit down. I haven't got a strap, so it's not too hard.
Bless you.